Hello everybody, I'm Charles Pedroso of the Pedroso team, Coldwell Banker Residential Brokerage. This is White Plains, New York, and today we have the pleasure of sitting with Marie Graham, home stager, designer, worked in management for companies and for herself now for 26 to 40 years or so, is that right?
Well, I worked for other people for 26 years and I started my business in 2007.
Mm-hmm. So the wealth of experience that we hope Marie shares with us today is specific to home sellers, and then we'll get into some information for home buyers as well. But Marie, if we could just jump right in.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Start us with staging. What is home staging?
It's, first of all, what it's not is what you see on HGTV. It's not that is not reality. That's entertainment. Mm-hmm. Home staging is really the very practical process of getting a house ready for sale, and it could be anything. And it, even with my experience, it took me a few years to come up with a really good working definition that, frankly, I've never known not to fail since then. So, you ready?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Home staging. Anything you do to improve the market position of a property and ease your mind. It is a huge mistake not to include peace of mind in the process, because otherwise it's just an aesthetic standard that's subjective and,
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit, go into the peace of mind a little. What is it about home staging that would give somebody peace of mind?
Well, I think it's the fact that people are involved and it's not something that's done to them. That people have choices. They can drive the bus. They can control what they want to do, what makes sense. The peace of mind, getting it on the market and people showing up and coming in with offers, and you don't know. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty. It's a very stressful process.
Can be.
And especially if you're living in your home, if you have the house prepared in a way that is the best it can be, but you can still live there, or if it still meets your needs, whatever they may be, then you breathe a little easier at night.
That's very good. Thank you. Thank you for that. We often, in this business, one of the first things I hear from our clients is, what's this going to cost me, or how much? Right?
Right, it's usually the first question.
Let's jump into that if we could. Help us understand how that works.
Well, I can't speak for the industry, but I've been doing this a long time, and I've realized that, at least from my point of view, is that it's best to look at it in two steps. Home staging is not a fixed entity. It's not like you're buying a gallon of milk. It's not like you're buying, a pair of shoes or something like that you can find on eBay and comparison shop. It's a personal service combined with product of some sort, and it's different for everybody. So it is always a good, important question to talk about money. I mean, that's the whole purpose of staging. Exactly.
To raise that price.
But it's rarely a good first question, because you don't know. I don't know. What are we doing? You first have to define the scope of the job. And so what I do in my business is I start with a consult where we talk about not only what it could look like, but what it should look like and why, what's going to be helpful, what's not. And then we get to the nitty-gritty of, well, who can do what? What resources do you have at your disposal? Do you have a second home that you can bring things to? If you're going to be making an upsize move, well, maybe you should buy that new sofa now and have it to enjoy in your new home. Again, everybody's a little different, so it's an exchange of information. Who can do what, how are things going to get done, and so on. And then at that point, you know what things will cost. I mean, that is sort of discussed and evolved and shaped during the consult.
Thank you. So what I'm drawing from that is, what exactly is the prospective home seller? What are these folks trying to accomplish? And then from there, with an understanding of what the goals are, and also what their situation is, as you said, they could be moving to another home, upsizing or downsizing. Maybe there is, as you said, some things that they could bring in now. That's really interesting. I've never, in my time, I've really thought about that, about utilizing maybe some of the newer pieces to help accentuate the home that we are going to put in the market. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, a lot of people don't realize, but often the IRS looks at monies that you spend to prepare a house for
right.
sale to
Very
prepare.
good.
We'll put stars on that. But the IRS tends to look at these things as cost of doing business.
Right.
It doesn't mean that if you put a pool in 2012 that it's a deductible thing. No, because that's not happening.
Right.
But the people that clean out the gutters, the guy that does the painting, the new lighting fixture in the dining room, what you do, what I always tell my clients to do is just keep either a file, could be on the desktop, shoebox, however you do it, keep all of the receipts, and in the tax year that you sell, you bring those to your client, when you're preparing your taxes, you bring them to your accountant,
Mm-hmm.
and they will be able to look at them and see. And as I said, obviously it's going to depend on someone's circumstances, but for the most part, these are things to consider.
Yeah, and I can relate, we have rental property and with tenants and such. We've staged before board and pieces before that were essential to marketing the home, and we have been able to write at least a portion, if not all of those items off, because they were legitimate purchases used for that, used in service of that end. So yeah, that's very good. Thank you again for that. Didn't think we were going to talk about the IRS today.
Well, money is very important, but the
Yeah.
point is that you need to have, I would need to have more information,
Right.
because what I do is not just get things to look good,
Mhm.
but to do them in a way that makes sense for that person, and everybody's an individual, so it's a back and we all bring
And the
something
home.
to the party,
Right, and the home type, and
everything.
yeah, all of it. So, can we get into some of the details, maybe of what makes maybe, for lack of a better term, a quality staged home, or what is maybe necessarily positive, maybe some colors.
Okay.
So give me an idea of
Okay.
how that works.
Well, from a listening point,
Yeah, so presentation, for instance, wall color and such.
wall color.
Yeah.
One of my favorites. When the most important thing that I tell people, there are 3 things that they should consider that should color everything that they do, every moment that they spend, every penny that they spend. And the very first thing, the most important thing, and I know you know this, you need to know this, listing photos are huge. And it's not just, we're past everybody looks online, because everybody looks online,
Right.
but everybody looks on these, right? And here's what happens. When your listing goes live, there are so many home finders apps out there. Buyers are scared to death, so they want lots and lots of information. Your buyers are going to have home finder apps, so when the listing goes live, their phone will ping and they will pick it up. They could be in the dentist chair, they could be waiting for a bologna sandwich, doesn't matter. They will look and they will go 1, 2, 3, maybe 4. If the photos aren't clear or crisp and to the point, they're going to do this and you're done.
Mhm.
They don't come. They don't
Right.
show up because they've decided that people assess that quickly these days. It's a very hard fact to realize. But to your point of wall color, and I was getting to that, is that your walls are your biggest surface area in any room. And when you put color on the wall, you make the eye see the space. And we were talking about this before, is that Caldwell Banker did a major redo a number of years ago.
Yeah.
It wasn't big. I mean, the color is still navy blue and white, but it's been tempered with this wonderful gray. And what happens is that you actually, the science of it is that when the eye looks at a photo, it immediately goes to color. You can't not see color. So it immediately goes to color, and it registers as you're seeing the wall space. The walls used to be white in Caldwell Banker, and so what would happen is you see this table, you see the dark carpet, you see the table, and you stick there.
Just focus
Exactly.
on that.
And what puts money in a seller's pocket is when people can instantly grasp how large a space is. They see the space. So, colors are very big on a wall.
Thank you for that valuable piece of information. Can we speak a little bit more to maybe the exterior of the home and the photos? What might be maybe attractive or more attractive, or what might garner more views or even more swipes of those photos, which in turn might provoke a private showing?
Well, how exterior looks is the second number I tell people to look at. It's if listing photos did their job and people get off the sofa, get in the car, and they drive to the house, the moment the sign comes into effect, or the house number, the clock starts. And people, again, going back to people can't not see color. What I like to do for listing photos is to add punctuation in the way of pots of colored flowers, yellows. I don't know if the camera caught it, that guy with the yellow, he just walked by. But
And
yellow.
It worked.
There you go. It's wonderful timing. Yellow is scientifically the highest visibility color. So you want to use, you always want to think about adding punctuation.
Yellow door.
The yellow
And a
door,
red home.
or whatever's existing to add a contrast of color. So I personally like yellow always. In the greenhouses come March for yellow pansies, because
Yes.
those babies can live in the snow if we're snow. But it makes a world of difference. Shutters are a wonderful, fairly inexpensive way to add punctuation and presence to a house.
Freshly painted.
Yeah, well, if it's called for, either it's the condition is not good, or the color is a little bit off or faded, or what have you. Again, every house is different, and if you're preparing a home for sale, what you want to do is be clear about what your expectations are in terms of the time of selling and what your price is, which is what you do.
Yes.
And then I weigh in with, well, okay, if those are the priorities, or that's where you want to be, these are what we should do to
Focus
accomplish
on.
that. In other words, that's we all bring something to the party, and I don't come in with a standard of you must do this or you must do that, but there are, you want to come up with things that match and meet people's needs and expectations.
Yeah, and so if you're pulling up to, say, view a home on a street where your neighbors' homes, say, the lawns are very well manicured, there's beautiful pops of color, and as you said, in pots or in plantings, and there's a phrase we use, buttoned up in construction. If the home is buttoned up, so to speak, or the homes on opposite side of yours are and yours isn't, just from the framing of what you see, I imagine it's not very positive for somebody to come to your home and have it not be that way. So I think that's important too, would you say, as well, is how does your home conform or look in the neighborhood or street that it's on?
Absolutely. It's what reads in photos, which is the neat, the manicured lawn, the detail. Those are the long shot, the big pictures.
Yeah.
But don't discount what people see when they actually show up, because there are certain things that don't show up on photos. And things like cobwebs in the light fixtures, little green things growing out of gutters, garden beds that may not be perfectly edged and what have you. And the thing is, so much of getting a house ready for sale is practical and doesn't cost a lot of money for people to do. But it's really important for sellers. The most successful sellers I know are the ones who can put aside the proud seller and think like a scared buyer.
Interesting. Speak to that a little bit.
Buyers are scared to death. They are scared of missing the right house, choosing the wrong house, paying too much, all of that. And what preparing a home for sale is about is basically eliminating a lot of question marks and connecting the dots for people, helping them. Yeah, helping buyers so easily see all the house could be, its strong points, and put it in the best position that it can be. I mean, you don't want it to be fake. The inside, my own feeling is the inside should match the outside. So you can't just throw great paint and Barcelona chairs in a living room if it's a Cape Cod. It doesn't work. It doesn't work because it just looks fake. I was actually speaking to somebody recently, a woman who writes for Realtor.com. We were talking about this before. She was, her point was, she was writing an article for buyers, and she was asking the question of, well, what is a clue? What is a dead giveaway if a property is overstaged? People talk about staging like it's smoke and mirrors, like we're trying to put something over on somebody. Not my property. It's not really. It needs to look real. People want real. At the end of the day, no matter what the price point, because I work in every price point. I work in every zip code in Westchester. I've been doing this for many, many years. at the end of the day, we really all want the same thing. We want to be real. We want real, we want to feel good. Where buyers are looking for more than square footage or a number of bedrooms. They want to have, what can they do in this magic house?
What's it like to live here?
Exactly.
Is that what you're conveying in your statement?
What's it like to live here? What dreams can they realize? For example, sometimes I'll work in a home and they'll have a workbench in the garage. And that's, to me, that like stuff like that is gold. It doesn't always have to be about the kitchen or the majestic baths. It could be a herb garden in the backyard.
You're telling a story.
Yes.
That's what you're doing. You're storytelling, which speaks to the audience, which in turn allows them to tap into, as you said, the dreams that they have for themselves and how they may live. That's so powerful.
Why are they going to buy this magic house?
Right.
What can they do in this house that they can't do where they're living now? And you really have to know, and part of that is the demographics. I mean, each property is a little bit different. It depends on the town and the price point and all of that sort of stuff. But it's an important part of getting a house ready for sale is really knowing who your buyer is and what they want to accomplish.
So you know your audience for sure. If you're selling an apartment in, say, a city like White Plains, oversized furniture, maybe some pieces that really don't make sense for the space, would be a turnoff, maybe, would you say?
Well, it's hard, you're talking about the furniture being oversized, not the apartment.
Oversized, no, not the apartment, certainly. Well, that's tough to find an oversized apartment in a city. But
just checking.
Yeah. But if you downsized at a time, at one point you had a larger home with big oversized furniture, it's extremely dated, and there's really not much that you can do there with maybe some of those pieces. If you've brought them into your, say, smaller apartment, and now you're selling the smaller apartment, what impression are people going to get? Are they going to see themselves, who are looking for city living, say, are they going to see themselves living in this home as much as if the home was staged for city living?
Right. Well, the biggest challenge or the biggest surprise a lot of sellers have that I find who haven't sold in a long time is how people make decisions today. It's so quick. Again, we were talking about this before, but it's so quick, and it's not necessarily a thorough absorption of all the information, but it's their impressions, and you got to work with it. Exactly. So if you know, for example, and by the way, I love working with co-ops. Love co-ops because it doesn't take an awful lot to make a huge difference.
I agree.
And they're wonderful. People are surprised to hear that. No, I love working with co-ops. The thing is, if you know your buyer, and let's say your buyer is someone who's leaving a house behind, chances are they're sad they're leaving a dining room, they're leaving the kitchen that they could do all the cooking for family events, and the dining room where they had their people, the family come over, the holidays, and so on and so forth. You need to be able to show that people can live in that way in the new place as much as possible.
I couldn't agree more. You're making me, it's immediately bringing me to a recent, we're in contract now for one of the apartments down the road here. Exactly that, someone who hosted, who had a large dining table and such, and we were looking at different layouts, and we ended up negotiating and paying a little bit more for only a couple hundred more square feet, but I should say a little bit more. It's not a small sum of money, just for a couple hundred more square feet, just so we could clearly fit our pieces to still continue to host family and friends and guests and such. So good and so true. All these points you're making, I'm reliving them as we're discussing them. Thank you.
No, sure, no, thank you. It's we both. The thing about both of what we do is that we at the end of the day we want people to be happy, and
that's right.
Home is so profound. What home means.
That's
and
right. Extreme,
all these years, that's what's always floated my boat. And if you can make it, again, easy for people to see themselves, what they're going to experience in the house and what they could experience. So it's the dining table, it's all of that. But to circle back to your point about oversized furniture, is that sometimes if someone has way too much furniture, or it's a bit of a time stamp, the best suggestion is to put it in temporary storage. Short-term storage, just to sort of clear it out. Because the truth of the matter, and the word that I hate is that's associated with staging the most, besides the word staging,
It's interesting, yeah.
is declutter, because it reduces your treasures to clutter, and it's not a good connotation. But the fact of the matter is our things tell the story of who we are and why we're selling. And if, going back to the buyer, the scared buyer, if they have a sense of who you are and why you want to sell, perhaps you need to sell. I do a lot of work actually in not so happy circumstances. There's illness or estate sales, that type of things.
Yeah.
Even divorce. We all need to sell at some point, but the point is if it's clear to the buyer who you are and why you're selling, that is going to hurt you. They may be distracted. That's the best case scenario, but usually they'll use that information against you.
And I do. If I'm representing the buyer, I will. If I'm representing the seller, we try to really do strong coaching on that. Not only just, not only in the space itself, but everything else you do and put out there. This is a really important point. This is just it's really good stuff.
Even books in the bookcase will tell the story. I had a client one time. She happened to be a healthcare worker, and she had a lot of. She also had a friend who was going through a serious illness, and her bookcase was full of these books. And when I got to the house, I glanced quickly at all of that, and I said, "You need to take these books out because it looks like somebody is sick." I know that's like under the electron microscope, and it might give some sellers the, "Ooh, what are people going to be doing in my house?"
That's for the detective who buys your home.
Well,
detective in all of us.
Or the parents, when the parents come, because that's the second feeling. You know,
yes.
That's
very common.
That's the important part of knowing who the buyer is. If you have a first-time or a move-up buyer, they're going to usually show up with, stars in their eyes and kids in their arms, and they'll be all happy. They'll be high-pitched, they're talking, and it'll be good vibes. But then they bring the parents or someone else who loves them equally back, someone who feels it's their job to keep them grounded, and they'll be looking at all these things. So.
Well, that's really good advice. Is there anything you'd like to close with? Maybe some stories or anything that you'd like to give us? Maybe what's the strangest thing you've seen, or some of the odd things or experiences maybe that might happen when you're preparing to stage a home, or after you stage the home for a seller, and maybe some things they can avoid or look for?
Okay.
Good stories. I know we were speaking earlier, there was something about you got into Manhattan for something.
Yeah, someone else asked me this, tell me a funny story about staging, and it's not, sometimes it's not always like funny. When I work with somebody, we have a relationship,
Right.
and so we'll have our own private jokes type of thing as we go through the process, and but it's nothing like rolling on the floor kind of laughing, but we always have a good time. We do. But I had an experience a few years ago that, and it sort of underscores the point that we were making before about how at the end of the day, we're really all pretty much the same. And we want the same things, we really live the same way, and we have the same stupid stuff happen to us. So I was in an apartment in Manhattan on Fifth Avenue, this was a number of years ago when I worked for someone else, and it was a beautiful apartment, just lovely, done, and just, it was gorgeous. And the seller had to go and take a phone call. So I'm standing in the living room, I'm looking around, and I'm noticing the rug because I love patterned rugs. And underneath a leggy chair was a raw hot dog. The kid, he had young children in the house, like, I don't know, they were 3 under the age of 5 or something like that. And so, there's always, but this beautiful apartment, there's this hot dog on the floor. And I thought, you know what, stuff happens.
It's a funny lesson. Follow the children around before.
Well, it's but if nothing else, people are very sensitive. Home is not just profound, but it's something that really we feel very sensitive about. It can be a hot button issue, which is why I just don't care for the word staging per se. But we really all live the same way, and you start the conversation. If you want to sell, if you're ready, willing, and able to sell, just start the conversation. There's no downside to that, and there is a mechanism in place where you can make stuff work for you.
Create some dialogue,
Yeah.
and get any fears, reservations, any questions out of the
Yeah.
way so you feel comfortable. And then you can prepare your home to sell rather than stage.
I've started to, when I talk about it, I alternate preparing it for sale, getting it market ready or camera ready.
Yeah.
Because most of what we do is.
All those are true.
But it's also a lot of what you do to move anyway. So it's not, it doesn't have to be. So stop watching HGTV, okay? Just stop watching HGTV.
Yeah, some of the renovations, while they're wonderful and beautiful, they're not always realistic to what might happen in every home.
No.
So that's the Refreshed Home. Marie Graham, thank you so much for coming in. We really appreciate
Thank you so
your
much
time.
for having
You're
me. It's been a
wonderful.
pleasure.
Thank you so much for watching. If you have any intention of buying or selling a home, call us first. We serve home sellers and buyers.